The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Now, very happy to say, Mr. Dan McDONNELL of the Irish Independent is here in studio. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad. It's good to feel welcome. It's good to get a good welcome like that.
Hey, Irish football. We're flying. We're dominating Europe. They can't stop us.
What can go wrong?
Air travel.
This is what we should do. We should declare everything fixed on the back of a couple of good football results. You know, that's the history of Irish football. It's like 1990s. Got to a couple of World Cups.
Yeah. The
game here is absolutely flying. Yeah. Facilities, stadiums, all these things we could do. Youth development. Nah, like we'll just keep qualifying for tournaments. That's what Shamrock Rovers, all these teams are going to qualify for group stages every year now. We can just get on with our lives.
Look,
we've reached this state of like this is the norm. Don't need to do anything. Like dump those strategic plans, FAI people. We don't need it.
Air travel and television coverage is all that can stop us now.
They haven't. There's been nothing put out yet about the FAI creating the atmosphere for this to happen. To be fair, so maybe they're learning from the mistakes of the past. You know that it's not because of them. You know, it's because of some pretty good young coaches and there is some good stuff going on and there's some good people on it. And to take sort of like you're sort of used to gallows humour like in this beat, so you know it's sort of you're conditioned to it, but. You do have these runs of like good results and you see teams on a reasonable stage doing well, and to me it more so drives home the argument of God, imagine if we were doing things properly here, this could be great. Like this isn't completely out of reach in the way that European football is structured now. Like there are chances there for clubs, and like these are good nights when they do happen, even if you can't always see them on TV.
Good to hear about, though.
It's good to hear about. It's the type of thing you like to wake up to in the morning, not necessarily see. Obviously, you like to be told about it. It's like good news. Like someone tells you about an old friend you know they got married and is happy. You know, it's, that's lovely. You know, didn't have to go to the wedding.
There's a certain romance in not seeing it and hearing about it.
Yeah, it's like the 20-yard shot becomes the 40-yard shot over time. Although there was like what I'm told, and I don't know what the numbers are, but there was a record number of streams last night on the LOI TV for this game, because it's probably the biggest game I can recall that has ended up in recent times. It would have been quite common probably in the 2000s, but in recent times, like the biggest game that for a while looked like it was going to be subject to a blackout, but it wasn't in the end.
I'm sure people well aware at this stage, Shamrock Rovers 2, FC Shkopi 1. It was 2-0 until about the 93rd minute, so it was a relatively calm finale despite the late Shkopi goal. So Rovers guaranteed European group stages in some form or another. It will either be Conference League or Europa League, depending on how they get on against Ferencváros in 9 days' time. First leg in Budapest. We're talking about the Hungarian champions. We're talking about 3 million guaranteed, which is no small matter. The performances against Shkopi, the scorelines both look comprehensive-ish. Certainly the aggregate's very comprehensive.
Yeah.
What would you say about Rovers?
Yeah, no, it's 8 days' time. It's Thursday week, but it's like they've been. I think the thing that struck me about the game last night was, and I would have mentioned this in my report, it wasn't stressful.
Yeah.
Like if you think of, say, people maybe who dip in and out of this, and they might be aware of like Dundalk beating Bate Borisov that time, or maybe Shamrock Rovers in Belgrade that time, or sort of isolated big wins, you sort of associate them with like diving tackles or, you know, heroic saves, or there's always that element of living on the edge and you've beaten the odds. And it wasn't like that at all. Like it was more professional, it was more ruthless, it was more clinical. Like even last Thursday, the first leg, Shamrock Rovers were 2-0 up at half time, and in the ground you're thinking, geez, this is looking pretty easy. Now, as it happened, they were pummeled for 25-30 minutes of the second half. Could easily, that's where they had a little bit of luck in this tie, that the Alamanis made some very good saves. But Shkopi were put down to 10 men with 5 minutes to go, and Shamrock Rovers scored to make it 3-1. It was just clinical. There was that small bit of, this is the type of thing that is done to Irish clubs elsewhere, and people talk about, oh, these are clinical, you know, these are seasoned operators, like you can't do that. And last night was a bit like that. they absorbed a bit of pressure for like 5-10 minutes, and then they managed the game pretty well. And that this is, I've written about this and probably been wrong to some degree. I was worried about the age of this Shamrock Rovers side. They're quite old. Like their average age is over 30 of their starting 11 a lot of these games. Their goalkeeper, even take the goalkeeper out of it, it's like 29 territory. So it's not like a team of sort of 22, 23, 24-year-olds, which maybe the Dundalk team in 2016 might have had quite a few of them. The small guys have been around the block a bit more. And while that you can see the pros and the cons of that, and at times against Ludogorets in the Champions League, you're thinking, God, they maybe just need a little bit more spark or energy here or something. In this scenario, they just managed the game extremely well in both legs, and they sort of advanced clinically and professionally in such a way that it wasn't a typical Irish club story where it's like this is an amazing fairy tale or something. It's not. It's more like a professional club doing sort of professional things, which is a progress in itself.
We talk about the League of Ireland as a young man's league. A lot of young players, the profile of most teams being quite young, and as you said, Rovers are more towards the late 20s, 30 variety in many cases. Is that a concerted decision or just the way it's fallen?
It's the way it's fallen. There's a couple of factors for it. I think there's probably, and I've written about this before, probably quite a few of the players who've gone to the UK in the last year. We've spoken about this exodus of League of Ireland players to the UK. I think a lot of them previously probably would have been, like Shamrock Rovers would have gone after some of them. In fact, they were chasing a couple of them, like Dara Burns, who went from Pats to MK Dons. The goalkeeper, Ed McGinty, who went from Sligo to Oxford. He saved a load of penalties in a shootout last night, or one penalty last night in his debut. They're the type of players that they would have gone after and probably haven't been able to secure them. They've lost one or two players as well that went. Danny Mandrew, who's in that age bracket, he went to Lincoln in the window just gone. So probably in recent years, they probably have... they've hoovered up a small bit of the experienced talent in the league. They picked up a couple of the players from Dundalk when things went a bit mad there. They brought Richie Towell home. There is an element of they've probably hoovered up some of the best talent around. There is no doubt about it. But they do have young players on the fringes, like Ido Amaku, who's scored last night, who does this mad stat where he's actually scored more goals in Europe than he has in the League of Ireland Premier Division. He seems to just come on in Europe off the bench and score big goals late on. But yeah, it's more like, there's no doubt that they have used winning back-to-back titles and being the foremost team in Ireland. We're going to be in the Champions League next year, lads, to probably take a lot of the more experienced players in the league and take them. But I do think the profile would be younger if they'd been able to get some players who just happen to have gone away. I
heard Gav Cooney say this morning on AM that Dundalk, for instance, had a bigger budget last year.
They did, yeah. Now that's because the Dundalk budget last year, 2021. I mean, it really was like sort of this mad sort of, I don't know, like a Wolf of Wall Street sort of party where everyone loses themselves. Like they got like Dundalk where they were. Post 2020 when they got to the last team that got to the group stage, which is almost forgotten. Like people remember Michael O'Neill and Stephen Kenny. They forget that Dundalk behind closed doors played Arsenal twice, and it was a bit lost because we were all lost at that time in our lives. And it was great. It was on TV, but there was probably like 50 matches a week on TV or something with everything. So that was lost a bit. But they basically splurged all that money on players afterwards, like, you know, and they paid mad money. They were paying sort of players, a couple of players come in on sort of, you know, $3,500-4,000 grand a week and stuff, and they weren't very good, and they were overseas players. So
Rovers
it wasn't that Rovers
now.
Yes, it wasn't that Rovers had a small budget then, to be fair. It was just that Dundalk had such a madly inflated one.
Fair enough.
But Rovers, what they did, they came along and rather than necessarily, they're offering good wages, but they more so offered long-term contracts. Like the Dundalk were offering lads a year on huge money, including some players maybe that they lost. Rovers were like, well, we're not going to offer you that in some case, but we'll offer you a 4-year deal, and you're 26 and you're looking to get a mortgage. Who are you going to sign for?
Dundalk.
Well, hang on. How much money are you talking about for the year? I think a couple of sort of level-headed characters, their decision has been vindicated.
So what do we know about the Hungarian champions? What chance have Rovers here?
Yeah, it is difficult to glean, really. Dan,
if you're going to come on here and you haven't watched Ferencváros at least 40 times in the last year, you're at nothing.
Listen, I mean, it's true. Well, I could pretend I have, and would you even know?
I would. The listeners may know. Yeah. Go on, what's the word that
so Ferencváros have ended up here because this Champions route is a new thing that's being created, and this is the thing that League of Ireland sides of like 10-15 years ago. And Stephen Kenny even spoke about this last week. They'd almost be a small bit envious that he had a very good Dundalk side, say, in 2015. They lost to Bati Borisov 2-1. I remember I was at both games, really close, and then you're done.
Yeah.
That is the end of your European year. Now you get a second chance. So Shamrock Rovers obviously were knocked out of the Champions League in the second round, and they come into this. Ferencváros got further in the Champions League and lost to Karabag last night. So they've arrived into they've got the backdoor route a little bit later. Yeah. So that's the form we're going off. They drew 1-1 away with Karabag. You think it's a good result bringing it back to Budapest, and they were 3-0 down at home, and they got a late consolation. So I mean, I'm going to conclude from that they're not great at the back. You know, you're thinking we got at, but a couple of years back, you try and look at sort of how clubs have fared against teams from that league. Like Bohemians went and played Ferencváros, who wouldn't be as strong as Ferencváros, but they pushed them very close over 120 minutes in a one-legged tie, went to penalties. So I think, you know, they're at the beginning of their season. Rovers are midway through, which is no doubt is a big fitness advantage for Irish clubs at this time of the year. So I see no reason for them to be intimidated by it. They are a stronger side, but it's a little bit of a free hit because Rovers don't have the pressure of failure if they don't do this. Like, they've sort of achieved their target for the year now, but they have the chance to strive for a small bit more here, get into a more glamorous competition where the money is slightly better, although not dramatically better, in such a way that if you lose, you're not going to be in tears on the pitch.
Either way, Europa League or Conference League starts 8th of September, so we'll be seeing Rovers playing European matches right through into the autumn and winter, and there'll be 3 big games in Dublin. I saw your colleague Paul O'Hare in the Mirror. He was saying Rovers have already inquired about the Aviva Stadium, which is understandable. For instance, if they make Europa League, they'll be sharing the stage with Manchester United, Arsenal, Roma, Lazio, and on we go. And naturally enough, if you land a Premier League team, Aviva full steam ahead. Yeah,
like the precedent has been shown that you can play. Actually, Dundalk showed it. You can play one game in one venue and, you know, 2 games in another if needs be. You know, there used to be a thing that you pick one stadium and you stick with that all the way through. You know, I think you can be a bit more a la carte with it now. But yeah, that is something that's on their radar. You know, they can look at that route, and it is true. Like, they now have this. Like, to me, it's kind of a weird calendar year this year, obviously with Qatar at the end of it, and the Champions League weeks, the European weeks, but we know them almost as Champions League weeks. They're going to be like very condensed into periods. To have an Irish involvement in that is what you strive towards, and it'll allow people to probably get to know some of the stories of the players in this team a bit more.
I think the real big win here is that the country gets to know Rovers properly now. They'll be on television. There'll be a sense of journey about this. The European games capture attention like no other. That's just the reality.
It is.
When I think of Dundalk games and their pomp, I think of the European games far more so. So if they were to get Manchester United at the Aviva Stadium, is there any way we can prevent Manchester United fans from going?
God, I feel like that's the cultural experience I don't want to experience. You know, I don't want that.
I mean,
you
I
know?
look forward to your article condemning this.
But you can't condemn people. That's not the way to go at it.
That's the League of Ireland way.
No, yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do, Joe. We send angry mails to people about not covering stuff. Like, that's clearly not the way to handle it. Yet it would be completely exasperating as well.
It'd be terrible.
You know, it would be. It would be like Rovers have enough that they could definitely manage a certain amount of it, and they'd be able to like get the singing section and stuff and get their people in the way they could organise. Like, a lot of the Man United fans, they obviously have to give something to. We're speculating a game that hasn't even happened. It may not happen, but it's fun. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, you'd still hear the Rovers fans in the corner. But the United fans.
No, you wouldn't. The United fans would just be. They'd just be on their phones, Joe. Yeah. You just hear this. They'd be like, they wouldn't. Like, you'd actually have the travelling fans could create a bit of noise, but the Rovers fans would. I think they'd win the volume battle. They wouldn't have the volume of numbers. They win the volume of terms of battle. Something like that's what I'm saying. Something like Arsenal is like they're obviously. Yeah. They're a huge fan base here, but it wouldn't be the same.
You'd have the awkward bunch in the middle who support United, but probably should support Rovers for the night crowd. It would. And do you know what? You'd have op-ed pieces in news sections of paper of people sort of trying to examine what this means about us. Like, one of the first games I went to Dan, if you're not in prime time talking about this, you're at nothing. Well, one of the first games I went to, and it was probably a formative experience in my life, was going to Pat's
playing Celtic in 1998 in Talca Park. And again, what happened in this instance was Pats went away first and it got a famous 0-0 draw in Parkhead, or Celtic Park, as what's the Paradise, to give it its full term, and an amazing result. So then it came back to Talca the following week, and I travelled up to that game from home, and like there was loads of people in the crowd, most of the people in the crowd cheering for Celtic.
Yeah.
And it drove me crazy, to be honest. I think it probably it stirred a sort of a certain teenage anger in me. I was like, and I understand the Irish affection with Celtic, and I've subsequently been to Celtic for big European nights, and I totally get it. Yet there was still part of me there going, like, these are, at the time, particularly, like, these are all Irish lads pretty much playing for Pats. The whole idea of, like, Celtic is like this Irish club in Scotland that sort of represents the hardship of the Irish people there. And you're sort of here cheering for a lot of players not from Ireland against them, and I was sort of like trying to analyse this, and I decided then, yeah, I'm going to become a League of Ireland nut at this stage. This is what happens.
Right there, we've got your intro to the piece.
I have a different perspective on life now, Joe, but it was one of those moments that I would probably, I'd love the story of a tie like that, but I'd probably partially would probably hate the event.
Yeah,
I have to be honest.
The noise around it, yeah.
I have to be honest, yeah.
But regardless, I mean, group football, it's brilliant. So just to note this, I suppose, or touch on it, the TV coverage and airports have been much discussed. On the airport situation, Rovers flew to the game last night from Shannon due to, quote, staffing issues at the airport. Now, Scoopy themselves complained because they had to fly to Shannon last week for the first leg. St. Pat's had to fly from Knock. It's a fair old trek out to Knock Airport, and they couldn't get home till Sunday, which meant the Shelbourne game was cancelled. So there has been issues here to the fore. CSKA, Sofia and Ludogorets both did get their charter arrivals and departures from Dublin. So the word from Stephen Bradley was, we're really disappointed with the situation. We find out again that Sofia are flying in and out of Dublin. Serious questions have to be asked. How the Irish teams can't do this, and it seems every team that comes here can do it. Serious questions need to be asked of the people making these decisions. It's not acceptable. I understand, he said, the travel chaos is for everyone at the moment, but it can't be that both Bulgarian teams are flying in and out of Dublin direct, and we're going out through Shannon and have to go back through Shannon. Pats and the trouble they're having, it's not right. There needs to be serious questions asked of who's allowing this to happen and why it's happening. Stephen, so say all of us.
Yeah, now, the broader aviation situation has been a nightmare, and to be fair, it's even probably made it hard to cover some games that people would like to have gone to. Certainly, trying to logistically look at some of these trips was very difficult. And these are big games, so it's probably not just even the TV coverage that has been has been one of the things that's been lost a little bit this summer. Now as it happened, Rovers ended up getting back into Dublin because of fog in Shannon. So that was the postscript to this. So and they did actually, Shannon was the previous round. They did get to fly from Dublin for this game, but they were coming back into Shannon, which was Stephen Bradley's grievance. So they travelled back through the night, got to Shannon around 4 or 5 in the morning, and there was heavy fog, and they were diverted to Dublin Airport. So the fog came in and saved the day in the end. Do you think this
annoyed Stephen Bradley even more?
I don't know. I think they were quite happly to get back. I think they were more like.
It crossed his mind. So why couldn't we have flown into?
Yeah, I know. And where did this fog come from? Is this
staffing issues? And suddenly we're in Dublin.
But what you want is more fog. That's basically what you want, more fog around Shannon. And obviously you see then that Shannon are offended, Shannon Airport are offended by people having to go. And it's not that. Bradley's point, to be clear how it was phrased, was it's more so the point that Ludogorets and CSKA Sofia were able to go into Dublin, and do the Bulgarians have some magic password or something?
Might it just depend which charter company you're paying?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. Rovers had a nightmare trip to Ludogorets in the previous round, and they were 3-0 down, and they feel it really cost them. Everything went wrong with that trip. Their hotels had to move hotels. Yeah. It couldn't have gone worse. And your preparation, if you're an Irish club generally in a lot of these games, the games where you're punching up, your preparation needs to be on point.
No, sure.
And that stuff kills you.
Absolutely. So they have a 8-day turnaround, as you say now, for Budapest first leg. The €3 million that they get from UEFA, is that pretty much swallowed up with logistics and charter?
No, it won't be. I see 8-day turnaround. The whole point is to see they play Derry in a very important league game on Friday, and that was Bradley's frustration about.
He wanted that moved.
Yeah, and that couldn't happen. And
does he not have a point on that, by the way? Why shouldn't the league be trying to move Rovers games to help?
So I think the thing with that is they've had games moved already, but I think the league sort of gave a message at a particular stage that when you get to the sort of third round onwards, you sort of need to try and fulfil fixtures. Rovers weren't really trying to get the game off. They were trying to get it to go to Saturday or Sunday, but I don't think Derry were budging with that. And Derry's point was, well, Shamrock Rovers, you did play an FAI Cup game against a non-league side 3 days after a previous European tie, but you didn't want to play us, as in, are you picking and choosing your games? And Derry will look after Derry, Rovers look after Rovers. You'd like to think there's some kind of, if you set some policy on paper that says any team that's in Europe, you get that week. That sounds great, but then you're going to get to November and have around 20 games to play.
Fair enough.
Look,
so the day there's a collegiate atmosphere in this league is the day it dies.
That's things have changed. Like Rory Higgins, well, would Shamrock Rovers have moved that game for us if it was the other way around? And you end up down that road.
One of the lads outside who'll remain nameless. He, out of interest, texted his Rovers United supporting cousin and asked him, if Rovers draw United in Europe, what jersey are you wearing to the stadium? The reply was, Rovers F United.
Well, there you go.
It doesn't hurt that United are so hateable at the moment. Even their own fans might go to boo them. I think
that's part of the problem, actually. Yeah, it's not like
Roy Keane in central midfield there.
No, it's your one chance to sort of abuse someone that you've been doing it remotely for a period of time.
Fans have waited years to boo Harry Maguire.
Yeah, this is their chance. We want to get on board. Like, if the Australians can do it, why can't we? To go back to your point, sorry, I didn't really answer it about the 3.3 million. No, I think
make some profit.
Like, when you think about it, like, Rovers have already made 2 million this year from Gavin Bazunu. The sell-on clause of Gavin Bazunu going on.
How much longer are they still getting?
As I said,
every time he makes a save at the moment, I think there's got to be some money for Rovers.
There's someone that Rovers have hired, a staff member who just sits at a desk on the corner on Bazunu watch. It's like people with royalties from a book. Like, every year they chase the Bazunu check that they get.
Does someone walk over and ring a bell?
Yeah, it's like Bazunu. What's that? Like, it's like when someone does a tip at a bar and someone rings the bell. It's like, they hear that sound, like, oh, what's Gavin done now?
I feel like Gavin made a save at training. There's 10 grand.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that now, since he's gone to Southampton, I think there was more the City deal that had all these little clauses in it. But I mean, they made 3 million quid out of Bazunu in the end.
Good.
Which is incredible.
So look, they'll make some money out of Europe.
They will. No, they will. They I think the whole message last night was very much like Shamrock Rovers went to group stages in the past and they probably squandered it. They have a little bit more, as much as the club still needs to balance the books. They've been doing well in recent years and still sort of recording some losses, but the whole plan was, as much as they would not say it explicitly, they felt they were on the path towards group stage football being there for champions such as them. Okay. And now that they crossed that threshold, they're in a position to do some good things, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you about the TV coverage briefly. Very short ad break. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent staying with us. We're back in just 1 second.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch over 400 games this season from the Premier League, WSL, Scottish Premiership and EFL. Live on Sky Sports.
You're very welcome back. Football Show is brought to you by Sky. Watch over 400 games this season from the Premier League, WSL, Scottish Premiership, EFL, all live on Sky Sports. I do, Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent, want to talk to you about the opening weekend of the Premier League. However, just to finish up on our League of Ireland Europe chat, TV coverage once again, the focus during the week. Declan McBennett of RTE is making a staunch defence of RTE's coverage. So in effect, there was a huge degree of consternation that this Shamrock Rovers game, amongst others, was not on television.
Yeah, and like, this was, I suppose last year was the first year I ever recall this being such sort of a burning issue. And that probably because last year was the best results in some time, and it just so happens that this year is probably maybe on course to surpass those results, and it sort of drives home the fact that, like, as you mentioned earlier, like these European games are something that people can get on board with. And I like, you know, sometimes the outrage can be convenient here. Like, there probably have been years where the results in Europe have been very poor, and people are probably happy in some ways that this has been a little bit below the radar. But I certainly hold the view that these European ties should be to the fore of any sort of broadcast discussion at the start of the year. I think they have more value than perhaps a lot of bread and butter league games, although I would like to see more of them covered too. Everyone wants everything, and I understand that rights issues around European ties can be complicated. Like, they're not all under one umbrella deal. Like, you'll have a different agent selling tickets selling a particular game. Like, I think Shrewsbury were quite difficult to deal with, for example, for this tie, for Rovers to even get the stream. So it's not perfect, you know. It's not like a case that like RTE or whoever else have a blank canvas and they can go after these games easily. But I do think, to me, like, when you now have had sort of 2 years in a row of European results, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise or that much of a gamble that next year to think, yeah, we should probably, you know, put some of our resources behind these ties here. Even in my mind, it doesn't bother me too much if that's at the expense of 1 or 2 regular league games. That's just my opinion. Some people will say, you know, sponsors of the league, or you need to go around the grounds in the league and give people a certain amount of exposure. I understand that. I sometimes think some of the league grounds that don't look terrific on TV, they shouldn't broadcast from those grounds.
Which
in
ones?
my opinion, I've named them before. You know,
You do it down to that camera lens.
I've got in trouble for singling out individual ones, but
No, just honestly,
No.
eyes down the camera, just name them. Don't deserve to be seen on television. Go.
They know who they are, Joe. They know who
Give me
they
two.
are. I'll draw them. All could be 2.
Give me 2 more.
Well, I think they'd be the main 2, actually, really,
Okay.
at the moment.
And what are the contenders that you're not so sure about then? That medium range.
Well, okay, Tala is good on TV.
Yeah.
Talca looks surprisingly good on TV because they had a good gantry point. That's where it's deceiving, even though the ground itself isn't an amazing, but it does look quite good on TV. It did for the opening game of the season. Pats is okay. Dalymount, they have an issue with the gantry now because the Connacht Street's been knocked down. I think that's going to cause complications for those Rovers, the games people think should be on in a couple of weeks. Yeah, like, not many of them look especially well, you know. Anyway, you're taking me down a complete rabbit hole here. That I got into this subject before, and I just was like walking on landmines everywhere.
I want to get you to a point where you're feeling trepidation going to every game on a Friday night.
Well, I've since ironed it out with some people I offended, and like, to me, like, I think highlighting the bad stuff is important. It's a bit like the TV outrage. To me, in my opinion, I think it's going to lead to more games in Europe in future being on TV. I just think that's I think it will end up being that way. Like, see, this like, I know this has been discussed in the last couple of days. There is always this uncomfortable thing that I think we love the game here, those of us who do. Yeah, like, the viewing figures could be better. We know that. We know at times the viewing figures are poor. I think the European viewing figures are actually pretty good, though, compared, as I said, to some of the regular Friday night league games. And you can't always predict what's going to be a big game and what's
Sure.
not. Like, you know how TV works, and you'll have like average audiences, but then you'll have a peak that suddenly, I don't know, at 8 o'clock last night, if a load of people are tweeting about, geez, Rovers are looking good here, more people will tune into it. And again, if a team is hammered, it doesn't go that way. But I think there has to be a point where you think these games in Europe are more interesting than a lot of the regular stuff that you do. I think they tick the box for sort of some kind of like public service remit to some degree. And maybe, yeah, like, there's this whole thing of who do you pick week on week, and you pick one team and then the other team has a great result. And sometimes the criticism is a little bit over the top and a little bit unfair.
Yeah.
But in saying that, a situation where a game like Shamrock Rovers isn't on TV, I'm pretty sure in most countries in Europe an equivalent game like that is on TV. Why isn't that the case here? You know, and we all have to examine that for various reasons. Like, it's multi-layered. It's not just one big bad wolf that's not doing it and everyone else. Like, you want more people to be interested, but it's the chicken egg thing of, to get more people interested, you need more games on. And certainly, everyone can be influenced by their own friend circle and their own group, but certainly a lot of people I know who wouldn't be, say, League of Ireland match goers. I get messages from them around the European games. They're more interested, and they're like, oh, why isn't this second leg on TV? Or Sligo are beating Motherwell, why isn't that on?
Yeah.
And they almost can't understand that. And And look, I mean, commercial broadcasters have their reasons for not doing it either. They sometimes get off a little bit lightly on this, you know, and they'll cover the group stages and they'll spend money. I understand they're in a slightly different situation. They're not funded by public money, but you'd like to see more confidence in the product from them. But that needs to be reflected by viewership too, you know. So there's
a chicken and egg there.
Yeah, there is. If teams qualify more regularly,
sure, the group stages will be on television.
It will be. You know, the group stages will be on Virgin because they have and to be fair to Virgin, like I think, and I mean, I can be corrected if I'm wrong on this, but they went for the Conference League last year as well as the Europa League. And I'm not sure if they were all bundled together. I could be wrong, but certainly I remember the press release with the Conference League. They were talking about, you know, we could show Irish clubs who are expected to be in this, and then Rovers sort of fluffed their lines against the team from Estonia, and they weren't. So I mean, they'll do a good job on those games. But I always say, like, you have to win your way into the news cycle a bit, but if this becomes the norm, like 2 years in a row, the results have been very good. I think then the case next year is that you can't be taken by surprise by these European games. You have to plan for them a bit more, and I would hope that happens. And I think that it might off the back of, like, even this year, RT, to be fair, they didn't do it last year, but this year they've utilised, like, say, News Now, you know, to take streams from away games, stuff that Air Sport always used to do. That can be done reasonably affordably. Air Sport going off the market had a big impact on that and left a void that people last year only realised existed. But in future years, hopefully it won't be there.
Okay. Premier League opening weekend. Lots going on. We're now at Wednesday, so it's been much discussed. What games did you watch? So
I watched Fulham Liverpool. I was in here watching Leeds and Wolves, so you know yourself, you sort of watch it, but I was watching Leighton Collins really more so than anything. And I watched pretty much all of the City game on Sunday, or pretty much all of the Haaland game, because I'm just fascinated by the whole Haaland thing. I was just about to
say, Mick said it the other night, and it suddenly hit me there. I totally agree. City have gone from being a team that I could take or leave because I had a fair expectation of what they were going to do against most Premier League teams, and therefore were somewhat missable. Have gone from that to you can't miss a Haaland game right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, like City, to me, if De Bruyne is playing, it probably would have been my favourite side to watch in recent seasons. Like, there's obviously this debate of City or Liverpool, and Liverpool certainly maybe more exciting or something. But I love De Bruyne as my favourite player still.
Well, I'd say you enjoyed that second goal.
Yeah, because like it's just like it's just watching Haaland, the explosion over 5 yards, even for the penalty. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's what you want to see. Like, when we were talking about all levels of football here, like you know, the reason the Premier League is captivating because it's now becoming very much like the best of the best, and then you have this superstar dropped into it, and this whole pre-season debate of will he be able to cut it, and then almost after an hour or like 90 minutes the other day, you're like, yeah, no, this makes perfect sense. And I still think, I mean, I did say it last Saturday on the show before they played, I think he'll be top scorer. I think they'll win the league. I think it's obvious to me that he will be a roaring success, because world-class players such as De Bruyne and that, it's not going to take them forever to adapt to what he wants. It's like, yeah, there's probably a little bit of a habit change and the extra pass that they take, but you'd imagine they spend enough time together and have this sort of the football IQ that they're not suddenly going to overplay it all the time now when they have this option.
It took them about half an hour, I think we can say, is the point. See, I suppose with City, the type of goal that we imagine them scoring so often is in part owing to the fact that they often play against a deep line defence.
Yeah.
Whereas West Ham, for the second goal on Sunday, presented them with an opportunity to play quickly through the lines. De Bruyne is like, okay, no problem. I can do that too. I'm not, so pre-programmed by Pep that we have to have 14 passes before we make the assist. And wasn't it something the way Johnson, who's not a slow player in the centre defence, so he was the one who had eyes on Haaland, and Haaland makes this run, and it looks like Johnson just doesn't go with him. But I actually think in hindsight he just didn't have the speed to even keep up with him.
He
made Johnson look stationary, even though I think Johnson was trying to track the run.
Yeah, no, look, it's just an incredible cocktail of sort of skills that he has, and I mean, look, there's always a way, and I'm looking forward to seeing how different teams obviously try to adapt to sort of different approaches to try and neutralise them in some way. And I mean, he's what, 22, 23 maybe. Like, he has played a lot of football, and things don't last forever. Like, you kind of wonder, will players there's various arguments on it, like, but sometimes like players with that sort of explosive capability, obviously it doesn't always last forever, you know, or they have to adapt themselves as they get older and become more rounded, and like the Ronaldo thing or something, you know. But I just feel like you're watching something at the moment. Do you remember, slightly different type of player in a way, but do you remember how brilliant Brazilian Ronaldo was, and sort of that World Cup '98 period? You know, where it was just like he was in super speed mode. Yeah. Like you press a button on a PlayStation and like this for extra speed. And I feel like there's these little moments where you watch Haaland where that happens, but he has the physical presence to go with it too. And you're thinking, I want to watch every game here to see what he does.
It's amazingly exciting. I mean, the Premier League, we touched on it with Tony Evans last night, 30 years on, has just become the World Super League.
It has.
And like the Haaland type players now are not going to Real Madrid, Barcelona, and thankfully not to PSG, that he's come to the Premier League with the best managers. It's so exciting. Martin Tyler did say mid-commentary that his heading when he arrived at Dortmund was so-so, and he's worked on that. And then it did occur to me during the match, his heading wasn't like the 10 out of 10 that everything else seemed to be. I suspect he'll now score at least 15 headed goals.
Yeah.
But like, you just can't really...
Well, you can't see City still throwing a load of balls into the box towards him either.
No,
you know?
That'll be in the final few minutes against Real Madrid if they're losing, in which case he'll score.
Yeah.
Connor Coventry made his debut for West Ham, by the way, in that game.
Yeah, he'd come off the bench. Yeah, like there was, I think, like Shane Duffy came off the bench late, Matt Doherty came off the bench late. As an Irish weekend goes, I mean, Bazunu, like Mark Travers had the best weekend. You know, he started and they won, and he kept a clean sheet. Bazunu, Collins, Seamus Coleman working his way back from injury. I mean, that's what we are looking at. We're looking at 7-8 names, probably featuring Conor Ronan, Joe Hodge were on the bench for Wolves, which is worth mentioning as well too. That's sort of encouraging. But to me, like, it's Bazunu, Collins, Travers potentially. I think Coventry, very good player, Irish under-21 captain. Still wouldn't shock me if he went out on loan before the window closes. But Collins, Bazunu, Travers, I think we'll talk a lot about them.
Good.
In due course.
We'll come to Bazunu in a moment. So Liverpool will have to continue at breakneck speed to keep pace with Haaland City. You watched them against Fulham. Tony Evans was on last night. He said they were abysmal.
They were stodgy as hell, yeah.
Jurgen Klopp is usually upbeat-ish about the boys, but he was withering in his assessment. He was saying something went badly wrong here. We'll find out what it is and we'll fix it. The midfield has been under much scrutiny over the past couple of days. I was saying to Tony last night, for instance, they've 9 senior players for those 3 midfield positions. 3 of them are 21 or younger. You've got Thiago, Henderson, Milner, all into their 30s. And so if you're talking like prime Liverpool midfielder, Fabinho for sure, and then it's Oxlade-Chamberlain and Keita, will he, won't he deliver? So if there's a sense of where it could go a touch wrong for them, maybe it's midfield, but then again, Thiago, Henderson, Fabinho will probably do a lot better in a lot more matches. It was a strange day, it seemed.
Yeah, like Mark Lawrenson was on here on Saturday, and he'd been in the training ground the day before, and you sort of reading between the lines of what he was saying. I think they'd arranged this bounce game against Aston Villa behind closed doors on a Sunday, and what he seemed to be suggesting is that they probably had a sense big time that they just physically weren't at it. They weren't where they needed to be. You know, they were a little bit undercooked.
A bounce game against Villa as in a pre-season?
They played a pre-season friendly on Sunday. Yeah. Or like, you know, they played a friendly on Sunday against Villa behind closed doors. So
that's the most logical explanation for what happened.
Yeah, they were so stodgy like that. I was sort of I was delighted they didn't win, because I think the power of Liverpool and City is such that if they can play that badly and win games, then you talk about the best league in the world, which it is, there's no doubt, but there's obviously a danger that some games become boring. Like, you know what I mean? If you can play that badly and win, I'm not sure whether they've learned anything from it. So it's probably right that they drop points for the performance they produced. And like, Fulham are good. Mitrovic was excellent. Like, I mean, he's been so good for Serbia.
We know about him.
And he's brought that into the Premier League, which is sort of good from their perspective. But yeah, they were just flat. It's very hard to. I don't know. Was there a big tactical analysis you could do about it and say they were missing? It was more just a general. Like, Liverpool are a machine when they're in full flow, and they were sort of a machine that wasn't in that at all. Fulham were sort of actually second balls and a lot of things. They were doing things that Liverpool are good at. They were hard to play against, and Liverpool were just, I think flaccid. Yeah,
that bounce game against Villa is interesting. I think the very likely explanation here is they just aren't quite 100% fit, and Fulham were really up for it and really fit. The second possibility is, and I said it to Tony last night in a way, this Liverpool group, and it's, you know, kind of fairly tight-knit small-ish group, they've played in so many big games, so many big nights. It's had to be relentless for several years. And you just think against Fulham, newly promoted, we're better than these guys. But like a touch of complacency, a touch of can't quite muster the adrenaline here at 12:30 on a Saturday to really compete with you. And hopefully just our quality gets us through. That's a more serious problem. Now, it probably is S&C, but it'd be interesting to watch this space, given how much they put into last season mentally as well as physically.
Well, if you remember, I think like this time last season, I think probably the negative slant on Liverpool, and some people would have been predicting them to maybe finish fourth or fifth last year.
Yeah.
Like, it was a surprise that they were, to some people, how good they were last year, this amazing season they had. And it was almost exactly what you said there, that there was the slight fear of, is this just going to be a burnout, fatigue? They've been going at it for so long, including some very long seasons, just the way that, you know, the timing of Champions League finals and stuff, and key players as well, between their international commitments. There was that slight fear that they've gone to the well too often, and sometimes a team has a life cycle, but then you bring it on 12 months, and actually they've probably regenerated areas of the squad in that time. Maybe not the midfield, but you know, you've Nunez, you've like Mane's gone. You know, they've brought in Diaz in January. So you would think that wouldn't be a concern, but there's always that slight niggle. All right, that like eras and cycles, like they generally always have a. Like you reach a point, but it felt like that last year Klopp was almost recognising that by making some tweaks to a squad. So I don't think that's going to be a problem, but it is something that lingers as a possibility that one season it will just happen because of the intensity at which they operate.
Before we wrap up, Spurs, we haven't talked about Spurs enough this week, given how good they were at the weekend. They had one wing-back scoring in Sessegnon, the other wing-back with 2 assists in Emerson, and more wing-back reinforcements on the way. Doherty to come back. Perisic played at wing-back last year in Serie A, had 10 goals and 9 assists. So you kind of think Conte has got these in really good shape. His 8 summer signings, none of them started. What a real kind of message that is to all concerned. Kulusevski was brilliant. Bazzuno conceded 4 and actually did okay.
Yeah, that does seem to be the verdict, and you're kind of conscious, sort of green tinted glasses on it. But you look at the goals. Like I think he has very high standards for himself. But you're not. You know, there was one with a cross. Might he have been in a better position? I don't even think so. Like I think this was a slight fear with Southampton is that their form towards the end of last season was poor, and Hasenhüttl has changed a lot of his staff behind the scenes, and could be a challenging year for him. But I'd be fairly confident, you know, his class will out. I mean, he had a year at Rochdale in League One where he conceded a lot of goals, and it didn't dent his belief or his progression. But you would hope. I think they have a tough start, Southampton. Their first 4 or 5 games are pretty difficult, so there could be some tough games ahead. But Spurs generally, there's a lot of confidence that they're like. You listen to a lot of the predictions of people who would watch them more and be on their beat and be more on top of things, and there is this real belief that they're going to be top 3. And I guess I don't have a reason to sort of poke fun at that or to question it, but I still feel like I want to see it over a sort of, and they have the Champions League this year too, and they do have a stronger squad, and Richarlison and various other players that they've brought in and to add a bit of depth, but that is a little thing, you know. They didn't necessarily have that last season, and Conte again is very demanding, and sometimes, like, you know, there's a shelf life with the Conte stuff, but they look to be in that sweet spot right now where it's all good.
Well, the pre-season sessions by all accounts have been horrendous. Although, just because we don't have time to talk about Man United, you'll be relieved to hear.
I'm just happy with that, Joe. It's no offence to anyone out there who's living this, but it's the one story that's I'm just done in. But I understand the entertainment value.
You'll have a lot of Man United talk when they're coming to the Aviva to play Rovers. Don't worry about that.
God, yeah.
But just in terms of like how dysfunctional,
why did you say that to me, Joe?
How dysfunctional they are versus Spurs, and like how Conte, who they passed up on, is sort of the point.
Yeah.
But how Conte makes all this look very easy. Well drilled, good signings. The signings he made mid-season during the year were very good. The signings this summer all make sense. And I was just reading the other day, he made his 7th signing. Excuse me, I said 8 a moment ago. He made his 7th signing during the week. A 19-year-old called Destiny Udogie, who is a left wing back. He's only 19, and he had 5 goals and 3 assists for Udinese last year. They finished 12th, and that was from left wing back. And so they've bought him, and they've loaned him back to the club. So Udogie and Perisic had the most assists and goals from wing back in Serie A, and it's like, look at like already the succession there. It's like Perisic's going to slot in. He'll be a really good player. We've got some others who can do jobs, Sessegnon, etc. And then when Udogie's ready in a year or two, come back, in you go. Compare it to the shit show over at Old Trafford. It's like unbelievable.
You just I don't know, like, I mean, the Arnautovic stuff, and it's just every...
Twitter didn't like it, so we pulled out.
Yeah. But like the whole thing, isn't it? Like, was it Richard Arnold, like, got filmed when he went to meet the supporters during the summer? He met them for a drink, and then that ends up going viral, like this clip of him having a chat. I'm just thinking this whole club is like, it's destroying itself at times, like, and it's very hard to see a way out of it. And look, I'm only joking. I understand the massive public interest in it, but it's just got to the stage where I'm not sure. I think I can't nearly analyse it with a very serious, straight face and what's gone wrong here, because it's just gone beyond that point of like farce. It's like sort of trying to analyse a Boris Johnson government or something. It got to the stage where it's like, we all know, like, this is falling apart here. So we could find different ways of analysing it and talking about it, but to me it's just, I mean, the show will go on, and it will go on badly.
Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent, very nice to have you back. We are up and running for the new season. We go again, Dan.
We do.
Football on Off the Ball is brought to you by Sky. You can watch over 400 games this season from the Premier League, WSL, Scottish Premiership, EFL, live on Sky Sports. Thanks again to Dan. Back in a sec.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.